And I'd also like to add that on that point, I also want to say that it is. I think there's this myth that multilateral trading arrangements are better than bilateral trading arrangements. Well, of course, bilateral trade arrangements could be bad or even worse. But the thing is, multilateral arrangements between a colonial master and ex-colonies would always be bad for the ex-colonies. So this is about, trade is about power relations. And so long as countries relate to each other, in terms of unequal power relations, then you would have the trade that it would reflect would obviously be bad for the weaker countries. So I submit that the free trade agreement, be they multilateral or bilateral, are actually bad agreements. Let me move on now to the second point. The story in my country doesn't stop there. So the market oriented policies, were bad for us. But the story didn't stop there. And today, what we are now seeing is not only our government is rushing into free trade agreements without even a clear idea of what kind of development do we want. I mean, we've always asked this from our government. So you're negotiating in an FTA with EU. What exactly do you want to protect? Which industries should we protect and which industries are ready for competition? And they never answered us because government has never had any industrial policy. And that's really crazy. So why are we now begging literally the EU to negotiate with the Philippines? Because our elites want the agreement. It's not workers. It's the elites who want this agreement. Second, the next thing I'd like to say, I pointed out that apart from the free trade agreements, there is also now a marked increase in the pressure from employers and government to institute what we call flexicurity. And this is what I pointed out. But this is the kind of social model that they are importing from Europe. And they're precisely citing that, this works in Europe, this is great, this is good, everybody wants this. And then I started asking my trade union friends from Europe, what is that? Flexicurity? Are you crazy? So I'd like to I think we should be very careful when we talk about exporting social, what was that?
Models.
Social models. Because it has to be, we have to make sure that we come from different contexts. And what could probably work for you might not necessarily work for others. Competitive. Apart from flexicurity, there is also this whole, and this is part of this competitiveness ideology. There is now this whole rush into towards trying to dismantle whatever remains of our labor regulation. And our government and the employers are citing several indexes. And they're using these indexes which keeps on increasing. A few years back, I only see one. Now today, there are several indexes that they are using, trying to compare each countries in terms of competitiveness. And then they will argue with us, listen, this country so-and-so is much more competitive than we are. And if you try to unpack these indexes, it only measures one thing, the power of employers to hire and fire. So now we're being pushed to try to compete with the other countries in outstripping every right that's remaining out there. So this is what it means to be. This is now what it means to race in the race for the bottom. This is exactly what is now happening, and that is, and it assumes it's as if I think we should be critical about this competitiveness, because it assumes that countries compete. Well, countries don't compete; they go to war. They don't compete. Who competes? It's the corporation that competes. Now, if you look at FTAs, this is about exports. How many of our workers are actually involved in exports? So if these are the workers involved with exports, then why are you asking the dismantling of all the regulations of labor rights in every worker who's not even involved in exports? So that's really crazy. We've got to be very critical about this competitiveness ideology. Third, and this is my final word on competitiveness, the Asian Development Bank, and you're proud of some of the think tanks around this room, and I'm really amazed about the power of this room. some of the think tanks in this room would probably be interested in looking at a study that the Asian Development Bank would release soon, I was told. And in this study, they're calling for a great bargain. The great bargain says that, listen guys, in the Philippines, you need unemployment insurance, which we don't have. No? But in exchange for unemployment insurance, you should allow the employers to hire and fire easily. So that's the great bargain for Asian Development Bank. Give us a morsel of unemployment insurance, but everyone suffers from hiring and firing. And then we try to ask the ILO, so what's the study? Where's your study about this unemployment insurance? And they showed it to us, and they said, well, initially it would be implemented where only about 6% of the workers would be covered. So 6% of the workers will be covered by unemployment insurance, but everyone else suffers the hiring and firing regulation. That's competitiveness ideology. So what can we do? Well, obviously, the obvious answer is organizing, right? Well, there goes the problem. Organizing. That's easier said than done nowadays. How do we organize, for example, workers when they're contractual workers for only 3 months? Employers would simply say, I'm sorry, but I cannot renew your contract. And that's it. That's the end of the line. That's the end of your union work. And if it doesn't work, there's always the economic logic, there's always the economic value of repression. These past few years, the trade union killings have been unleashed once again in the Philippines. So it's no longer Colombia is dangerous, which is a dangerous country for trade unionists. Even the Philippines now is very dangerous for trade unionists and also journalists. So by the way, if you try to organize a union, that same day, and let me give you an example. We were trying to organize the biggest garments factory in Mindanao, it's the southern part of the Philippines. That same day that we filed our petition for registration, our leaders, practically all of our leaders, received a visit from the military intelligence unit in that area. They knocked on their doors, talked to the wives or the husbands, and told them that, did you know that your husband or your wife is working for a communist front? And this communist front is called Alliance of Progressive Labor. That's my union, by the way. And that scares the shit out of them, and that destroys the organizing drive. And if that doesn't work, they get sacked. They get sacked, and if that doesn't work, they get killed. So that's the problem. So what am I saying here? The point I'm saying here is that all these neoliberal policies, at the end of the day, is not about just profits. It's also about destroying the very instrument of power of the working class. It's about destroying the trade union movement. And if that is the case, then I submit that what we need to do is not just to fight against FTAs, not just to regulate corporations, though that is important. I submit that what we need to do is really rethink the entire system. It's about time that we really think about it. If you look at it, in the 1930s, after the Great Depression, America tried to regulate capital. What it failed to do is that it failed to regulate profits. And after several decades, the corporations were able to amass so much profits that they are now powerful enough, to circumvent whatever regulation that period has thrown against them. And so now you don't have the Glass-Steagall Act, you don't have any regulations in the U.S. And I'm saying that if it's the system that's the problem, and if we want to really fight for workers' rights, we cannot stop at fighting FTAs, we cannot stop at fighting policies, we need to fight the system itself. So, let me stop there.
Thank you very much.